Hello slot car family. Today we are going to change the motor in a 1/43rd scale slot car. Now if you guys have seen my previous videos about torturing the system, I was running this car at 24 volts because the motor was already getting kind of slow, and so I just ran it for a while. I think it took about 25 races. I lost count. But I think it took about 25 races before it finally gave up the ghost. But it's done for, and it's time for a new motor. So I have had some requests to show you how it's done. So that's what we're going to do here. First of all, this is an AGM branded car. It's one from AliExpress, and I had 4 of these, and this is the second out of the 4 to burn up its motor. So I'm not crazy about the motors in these cars. I have an extra motor here that I got off of eBay, and a Facebook poster told me where to look for these, and I managed to it gave me the link to them, and they are the correct size and everything for this car. So you never know. I don't really know anything about the longevity of these motors. I've only installed one of these in one car so far, just like this car, and it worked fine once I installed it, but I haven't ran it much to know much about it yet. But anyway, let's get into this motor removal. And this may take more than one part because my camera could shut off, or who knows what happens when you're doing this. It may just get too long for Facebook, so I'll have to do it in a couple of parts. Also, excuse me if it sounds like I'm breathing heavy because the camera's basically right under my nose for me to do this. But starting off with the car, the first thing you got to do is remove the chassis. And in this one, there's 4 screws. Oh, wait a minute. Let's get back into tools. Basically, the tools that you're going to need, I would say, are a jeweler's screwdriver set, which really you only need kind of a sharp little Phillips head like this one, and pretty sharp little flathead like that. And on these AGMs, this particular model, these Mercedes, what is this one? It's a Mercedes-Benz SLS AMG. Okay, so on this particular model of AGM car, there are 3 screws, 1, 2, and 3 that you remove from the chassis, and then once you've taken those out, you can pop this loose. Now, up inside here, you do have these wires that are going to your lights on top on this particular model, and you want to be kind of careful with this because these lights are these wires are pretty delicate. They'll break off from this little circuit board in here that they're attached to. And if they do that, it's not impossible, but it's a little bit difficult to resolder them. You have to kind of have a pretty steady hand, and I'm not sure mine is steady enough to do it. But, so step 1 is motor removal of the old motor, right? So we've got a couple of spots where it's obviously soldered in here. We're going to need a soldering iron. I forgot to mention that in the tools. Going to need a soldering iron. And the way these motors are held in, it's going to be really difficult for you guys to see, but if you open your own car and look, you'll be able to tell, and if you follow this video and open your own car, you'll be able to tell. But there are 2 little plastic clips here one on each side. There's one right there that holds the motor, and these clips are built into the chassis. It's just all part of the chassis, and the same on this. Sure don't want to yank those wires off, doggone it. You got to be real careful with those wires. And on this side, we got this little plastic clip here. Now, I'll tell you, on the Carrera cars, they're a little bit different than this brand. On the Carrera cars, you actually have a little slot. Oh, wait, there it is. There's the hole. Okay. Well, there you go. Well, let me correct myself. These cars also have that little hole. And what you do is you put this screwdriver into that slot so that you can kind of pry outwards slightly on that tab, and when you do that, you can grab this motor and pull it loose, hopefully without breaking off those little plastic tabs. And then once it's popped loose from there, it kind of pops out. Now, unfortunately, in this instance, you can see here the magnet came out too. I think they use not much for glue to hold it in there, so I'm going to have to glue that back in. But that's step one, removing the motor. If you can do that without breaking off the tabs, you've done a good job. Now, if you do break off the tabs, it's not the end of the world. Here's the funny thing about this, and I saw this on a video, on a slot car video on Facebook. If you break off one of the tabs, don't fret. Just go ahead and do all your repair stuff. Put the motor back in like it's supposed to be. Hold it in place. And put a glob of hot glue over there where the broken tab is. And normally the motors don't get hot enough to, or evidently from what I've seen, the motors don't get hot enough to melt off the glue. Now in this case, where this motor was getting sad and I started hitting it with 24 volts, I'm pretty sure if it had been glued in with hot glue, it would have let go. But that's neither here or there. That's a different story. I think under normal circumstances, you're probably okay with the hot glue. So, let's take a look at what we've got here with this motor. The back of this motor actually just has two wires run to it. It has a little capacitor strapped across those two contacts on the motor. Little capacitor. And it's got a little ground tab that's soldered to the back over here. So we're going to need to unsolder all that. And it's kind of a pain in the butt because if they wrap this stuff around here, sometimes these things won't come off the way you want them to. And I like to use a little helping hand. Another thing on your list of tools if you don't have one already. These things are really, really handy. And they're inexpensive. Now in this case, it's not really working as well as I'd like it to, but it's going to have to do. So we're going to pull this up, try to get it where you can see it on camera. Still trying not to yank my wires off that circuit board because that's a pain in the neck. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can pull this part here loose first. Okay, I can. So first of all, we want to pay attention to the polarity here. This other motor looks just like that one. So I'm going to orient it the same way with these air slots up in this case. And now we're going to take off this other wire over here. So we want to notice that black goes to the top. And in order to remember that, I am going to find a black marker and mark this black. So how about that? So if this was oriented the same way, this one over here would be the black one. So I'm going to mark this right here with the marker black, so we'll know that needs to be black. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to scrape that and solder to it, so I'll put a little more black over here just so I don't cover up the black when I'm doing my soldering and tinning. Alright, now we're going to pull off the red wire, and we're going to pull off this capacitor, which is kind of serving double duty here, and this is where it gets me a pain in the neck, because we've got to try to heat all this up at one time to pull this capacitor off of here. So if I can get this wire here loose first. And I'm sure you electronic wizards have better ways to do this than I'm using here. But once you get this wire here loose, you can start working on the other end of it. Alright, so we got the ground tab loose. Now we just got to pull this part out. I think I'm actually going to do this part here first. Boy, it's not wanting to come loose off of there. I could use a third hand because it wants to spin around on here, and I don't think this is going to open up and give me what you really need is a vise. Okay, let's try it this way. Alright, we're getting somewhere. Alright, well, this is pretty boring for the video. The end result is I think you need to heat these parts up and pull this capacitor off here if you want to reuse it, which I intend to do. So I'm not going to show more of that on video. I'm going to figure out a way to heat that up and pull that off, and we'll go back to the reinstallation on video 2. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.